So let's get started. So what are the key reasons? So, what are your reasons? So since all of you are here on this webinar today, if you could just put it on the chat window, why do you think you want to do a master's? You can just put it on the chat window. This will also ensure that you are attentive. Just put it on the chat window. Tell me, why do you want to do your master's? Career progression, great. Skill upgrade, perfect. Perfect. Expand my horizon to be relevant in the industry, better opportunity, perfect. Right? Yes, to become a subject matter expert, Anshul, perfect. Better lifestyle, improving knowledge, perfect. So I think we all are on the same page, right? So that's perfect. So the whole idea of, when you focus on doing a master's program or think of doing a master's program, right now, when you look at it, most of us in India especially, what happens is most of our career decisions, at least the initial part of our career decisions, are dependent on factors which are either, parents telling us what to do, or, your friend has gone to that particular program, or you have heard that program is better or not better, right? No, so typically our graduation is dependent on how much marks you've got in your 10th or 10th, 12th standard. What stream you've chosen in your 10th and 12th standard. So most of our decisions are, what engineering you do, whether you do a bachelor's in commerce or a bachelor's in science, or you've taken up arts. All those aspects, most of us, our graduation is dependent on factors which are not chosen by us, right? However, for a master's degree, what is very important, what happens is it also gives us an opportunity, because now that you've spent some time doing your graduation, a lot of times, at least it was in my case, I knew what I didn't want to do. I did my honors in physics, and I was so clear that I didn't want to do it anymore, right? So I'm sure a lot of us, in fact, I speak to so many students every day, and I see this as a common problem. And I think it's, typically because of our education system in India, that initially our focus is completely based on what parents have told us, or based on what marks we have got, right? So but what happens when it comes to masters is, either you have already spent some time working, and you also understand what you don't want to do, so at least you have kind of filtered out the things that you don't want to do, and now you want to focus on what you really want to do, and you want to upskill or upgrade, or specialize in something that you believe will really help for you in the future. At the same time, it's also adding to your skill sets. It's also giving you, like someone mentioned here, being a subject matter expert kind of an option, and it will give you that extra degree or an extra brand name, which will help you, in the long run, right? More to expedite the career in the long run, right? So that is the one thing which is extremely important. It will help you specialize, right? Second is, obviously, this is again one very important question. With this whole pandemic, globally, it's nothing to do with just one country, but globally things are, not going great, right? So you have heard of so many layoffs happening everywhere, and so many businesses not working. So why does, lot, again, this is a very important question that comes in everybody's mind is, do I really focus on putting in that effort in doing a master's degree during this recession, right? Now, here is my thought on it. I think one of the most important things that we have to understand or realize is, in fact, recession could be the best time for you to upgrade, right? Because what happens is, if you look at it, what is the backup plan, right? We don't really have great opportunities right now, right? So with that thing in mind, maybe recession is a good time to upskill yourself, because when the whole world is worrying about figuring out what to do, you are focusing on education. You are focusing on making sure that you are insured for the rest of your life, right? You're focusing on making sure that you specialize, you spend that 1 year 2 year focusing on making sure that you have the right degree, so that if you look at any recession, whether it was 2008, 2009, it takes around 1.5 to 2 years to, go, if there is phases of, uh, the curve goes up and down, right? So if it's a downtime right now, it will definitely come up sooner, right? So, and since it's a global recession, it will come out sooner, rather than, it won't take so much time, which also means with most of the experts when they are doing their analysis, they say that within 1 to 1.5 years is what will take maximum to come out of this recession, which means that time you will be spending on focusing on upskilling yourself, upgrading yourself, and by the time you actually graduate, it will be a great time for you to come back to the skills industry, right? So I think with respect to the recession part, if you have an opportunity to go either this year or next year, it might be a good time for you to upskill yourself, right? In fact, a lot of students have been asking us, asking on Quora also, is this a right time to do the masters, with the global business going down, whether we should really do it. So, there are a lot of answers on Quora also that you can find. However, these are the things that I think you should focus on with respect to how you should go about with your masters. Now, there are two ways to look at it, right? So obviously when you're doing an MBA masters abroad, there is an investment, right? So you have to put in, and obviously it is much more than doing it in your own country. But how does that help you, right? Whether doing a master's abroad is a good option for you, whether it does make sense to even invest so much at this point, right? Now, when you look at doing a master's abroad, the first thing is obviously you have a lot more options available, right, in terms of high quality courses. There are, if you look at just computer science as an umbrella, there is AI, there is machine learning, there is cyber security, there are so many options available. And similarly, if you look at any other sector for that matter, whether you look at supply chain, or whether you look at marketing, or whether you look at logistics industry, there are so many things that you could specialize on, right? Which also means when you're looking at a master's program abroad, it also gives you an option to a variety of courses that are available. Secondly, depending on what sector you're looking at, you could also look at better jobs. Again, whether you're looking at coming back to your own country or even looking at working over there, obviously better jobs in the future. Because a lot of people tell me that, oh, I have 5 years experience, 3 years experience, 2 years experience, do you think it's a good time for me to actually apply for a master's program, right? What I tell them is, you are not looking at why do you want to do a master's program. It is to ensure your future, right? You might, whatever experience you have till date, you're just leveraging that experience to do what you want to do in future, right? So the whole idea of upgrading or upskilling or doing a master's program is to land up in a better job and also see that better career progression in the future. Obviously international exposure, what happens is, when we, our education system is very different. Every country's education system is very different. The way we have learned things in India versus the way it is taught in other countries is also very different. So what happens is, I'm not saying ours is good or bad or anything of that sort, but it is just different. But when the 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 way it is different is, it gives you a lot more exposure to understand or have a different perspective of different kind of things, right? Like for example, the way marketing works for an Indian audience might not be the same of how it would work for a American audience, or a European audience, or say an African audience, right? So with the culture, with the way consumer changes, marketing also changes. So this, international exposure also gives you that opportunity to look at any kind of specialization from a different lens, right? So it gives you that understanding also. And obviously it helps you live and work abroad. So you work with different kind of people and live with different kind of people. So that obviously gives you a lot more understanding of you get more adaptable, and you have a much more exposure to different kind of industries and different kind of people and culture for that matter, right? So these are pretty much the 3 or 4 things that you should look at, especially when you're looking at a master's abroad. However, choosing the right program is also extremely important. A lot of people say that, hey, I did my engineering because my parents told me to do, right? Or like I said, I realized what I didn't want to do after I finished it, right? So what happens is, here when you're looking at a master's program, in most cases, you are the people who are going to pay for your master's program, that you are going to take the loan and you are going to pay off your loan. Whereas when it comes to a graduation, when you're looking at a bachelor's, it's mostly our parents that have paid for our education. But when it comes to a master's program, it's mostly us who are going to finance our own education, whether we are taking a loan or anything of that sort, which also means you want to be slightly more focused with respect to what kind of specialization you want to take and how you want to go about it, right? So that is one important aspect. In fact, on the chat, I have my colleague Rachel. Maybe Rachel, if you could just put a link. Yeah, great. So you could, read this article on 8 reasons to do a master's abroad. This will give you, again, summarize a lot of things that we are already talking today. At the same time, you can just keep this open on your or bookmark this on your browser so that you can read it for later after the session, or maybe tomorrow. It will give you a good insight on what it takes, or why should you even consider a master's abroad, right? Cool. So once we have that clarity in mind that, okay, these are the kind of master's program that we want to look at. So what are the top master's program that you look at? Now, there are various kind of programs that are available. What, again, like I said, I've tried to do is I've put it into specific buckets. I will touch upon each and every aspect over here, but we will okay, Rachel, I think you put it on the panelist thing. You want to put it on the attendees list. Yeah, just share it with the attendees too. Yeah. Cool. So there are different kinds of programs over here. Some, some are, masters in management, masters in marketing, masters in engineering management. There is EMBA, E-masters. Then there is a research aspect of it. Let me just go step by step on each and every aspect so that you get a better idea of it, right? So what are the kind of specializations that are offered? Let's get on to the masters in management kind of program. Now, masters in information system to begin with. So this is typically, if you Google for it, you'll find it at MIS programs. So what are the requirements for an MIS program? Pretty much you have to be from a computer science kind of a background. At least you need to have some kind of understanding of databases, because when you're looking at information system, if you look at any curriculum with respect to MIS, you will see a lot of emphasis on database management kind of understanding. So this is one important aspect when it comes to masters in information system. Most people who go for MIS courses are also people who are either done their bachelor's in computer science, or done some kind of aspect with respect to computer science, right? Or if you have an understanding of databases, you can still apply for MIS programs. What kind of role? So how do companies look at MIS, people with MIS background? So if you look at it, it's not necessarily that you go and get placed in a technology industry. Every industry requires MIS, right? So look at a huge manufacturing unit or a huge energy sector unit, right? So they need a lot of information about their employees and their people, and when you're looking at their budgeting. So there are a lot of things that are required in terms of the information that they need to manage and curate and use that to make strategic decisions. So MIS, people who look at doing their MIS come in here, right? So they focus on those kind of roles where they focus on making sure that they use technology and they bridge in the business, bridge in the communication between business and technology to help take strategic decisions, right? So that is the one important aspect of, or these are the kind of people who look at MIS kind of courses. Now, typically, what are the kind of program opportunities you get after MIS? You are either a business application developer, an IT consultant, IT development project leader. Some people also get into project management roles, database administrator, business intelligence analyst. These are the typical kind of roles that you get into after a MIS kind of a program. Now, there are some dual degree programs with comes to with MIS also. I remember one of my students got into ELLER. ELLER is Arizona Tech and Arizona State. and it has an MIS program which has a dual degree option with an MIS plus an MBA program. So you can just research on that aspect also, where it's a 3-year program, but at the same time it is STEM, and you get all these opportunities, and it also becomes like an MBA kind of an option too. So it's like a dual degree program over there. So you would want to evaluate that aspect too. There is another link specific to MIS. You could look at that aspect. Here's the link. Rachel has provided that. This is again specific to Masters in Information System. Again, you could just copy this link and keep it open for reading later. There is also there is a list of top 10 schools specifically for MIS. You could look at that option too. So you can evaluate the kind of schools you would want to apply to, right? Now, then comes, Masters in Management. Now, again, this is a very big confusion that a lot of people have. They say that, okay, there is MBA and there is management, right? So where should I go ahead and apply? So typically Masters in Management are programs that are applied to when you have less than 2 years experience, mostly, right? In fact, most schools specify that if you have more than 2 years experience, don't apply for an MIM, apply for a master's MBA program, don't apply for an MIM program. So this is specifically for people with less experience. Like how MBA is for US, similarly MIM is for Europe. So how MBA was created in US, so most of the top schools, if you see, MBA programs are all in all US schools, right? Whereas when you're looking at MIM, most of the schools which, MIM was created in US, right? So and they value, Europe. And MIM is valued a lot more in Europe compared to, any other part of the world, right? So if you're looking at some schools, like say, for example, HEC Paris has a great MIM program. St. Gallen, if you have not done your engineering, but you have done something like a BBA or a BBM or a, bachelor's kind of a program, which has some kind of management, course curriculum in it, you might want to look at St. Gallen, Switzerland, which is one of the top programs for MIM. There are other programs like ESSEC, there is ESEP, and a lot of Rotterdam, which is in Netherlands, they also have MIM programs. So you could look at those kind of MIM programs also. So Europe is a great place for MIM. Other than that, obviously, London Business School has a great MIM program. You could look at that option. INSEAD has it is a relatively new MIM program. That's also a new MIM program. And US also has some programs which are comparable. For MIM, they call it an MMS kind of a program. So Duke has a great MMS program, similar to an MIM program. So again, you would also want to look at, okay, whether it's a 1-year program or a 2-year program. So you look at it from that perspective, right? So you can look at those options. Cool. So what are the career opportunities post MIM? You can look at a management trainee kind of a role and then gradually grow in that role. General operation manager, advertising manager, public relations manager, or a sales manager, right? So here, if you look at it, if you compare the curriculum between MBA and MIM, the curriculum you will see is pretty much very similar. Some things that might change or might differ. In fact, I have compared the London Business School MBA versus an MIM curriculum. I would say the major difference that I saw between an MIM versus an MBA is more around case study based approach in an MBA versus an MIM, right? Otherwise, or it's a slightly more not very detailed version in an MIM compared to an MBA program, right? Masters in business and MIM might not be the same, Shubham. Sometimes what happens is, depending on which school you're talking about, there might be a change in curriculum. If it's masters in international business, they might focus more on policy stuff and more on international business stuff. So maybe you want to look at more around the curriculum. It's definitely not the same, right? So there might be some specific I would say electives or specific courses that might be different in these two programs, right? On what basis does a school judge taking an MIM applicant? I'll get to that later. I will park this question for now, right? Again, there is a great article on our website on MIM versus MBA. Like I said, whatever I have said, it's a more structured version. We have all put it into a blog post, and it can come in handy even after this session. So maybe you would want to look at an MIM versus MBA blog too later, right? In fact, I'll talk about one of the student who got into MIM also in some time. So before that, let me just get on to the third part of it, which is the masters in science, right? Now, again, this is more about specialization, right? So a lot of people are looking at specializing in masters, doing masters, but in very specific niche areas. They look at marketing. Again, if you have a background, say for example, if you're just doing your graduation and you've done some kind of internships in marketing, right? Or if you have couple of years of experience and you're focused specifically on marketing, and you want to focus become a subject matter expert in marketing only, maybe a master's in marketing might be a great idea for you, right? Entrepreneurship, there are a lot of people who want to specialize in entrepreneurship kind of specialization, where they want to understand about investments and managing finances, and there is managing operations, when it comes to becoming being an entrepreneur, recruitment, hiring, team management. There's a lot of things to entrepreneurship, right? So there are specific courses with respect to entrepreneurship, specific to people who are looking at a career, going ahead, investing either their own money, or creating their own companies. Look at masters in entrepreneurship as an option. Supply chain, again, specifically if you've worked in supply chain kind of backgrounds, and if you have an understanding of operations, specializing in supply chain might be a great option. I have had a lot of students I worked with this year who specially focused on supply chain management. There are people who got into Ross for supply chain. There are people who got into USC Marshall for supply chain. So some great programs for supply chain from MS in supply chain. Again, if you look at the curriculum, there might be, there are some specific, so say for example, supply chain curriculum would also have, give you an understanding, to give you an expertise on specific tools that is required in the supply chain industry, right? Analytics is a big thing in supply chain. So maybe you want to, they will have electives specific to supply chain with respect to electives in analytics, right? Finance, MS in finance is, again, a very important factor. Again, a lot of schools say that, have specifically mentioned even on their masters in finance website that they really don't require too much of background in finance. But if you have, that will be great, right? So I have had a lot of students who got into MS in finance because they were interested in finance, and they also showed their interest by doing some kind of courses, like say for example CFA level 1 or something like that, or they've done specific certifications with respect to finance to show their interest in finance, and they go ahead and apply for MS in finance kind of roles, schools programs. Then there is engineering management. Again, this is slightly like a mix of technology plus management. Few programs that few programs or countries which specialize in engineering management kind of courses are: Australia has it, Canada has it, UK has it, Germany has it. They also specify that it's specifically for people with slightly less than 5 years experience. Typically the kind of roles that you get into after an engineering management kind of a master's is you get into as an application engineer, or an automation engineer, or a business analyst, or a client service analyst, things, those kind of roles, right? So again, with respect to each and every masters, there are specific streams that you could look at, specific roles that you could look at. So based on your interest, based on what you would want to specialize on, you can pick the relevant master's program. If you're looking at marketing, the kind of roles you could get into is content marketing manager, digital brand manager. Entrepreneurship, great for small business owners, great for family business, people with family business. They can get into as business consultant. For supply chain, you can become a supply chain analyst kind of a role, right? So these kind of roles. Some people also get into operations when it comes to supply chain, right? So they become supply chain managers in, like if you look at the example of Amazon, right? Now look at the kind of supply chain they require when it comes to getting something to your place, right from getting it from vendors to making it sure it is stocked, to having it delivered to your doorstep. It's a huge supply chain that they have optimized to the T, right? When it even to the point that the size of the box that gets into the truck, which actually reaches you or delivers it to you, is also something that they look at. So they look at optimizing it at various levels. Look at Apple, right? Apple, till now, till some time back, till the whole COVID thing happened, obviously, they had its, you know, biggest manufacturing unit in China, right? So they had a youth, so they had to make sure that they have to China and other parts of the world, right? So they have to get everything together, make sure the demand is met, everything is there on time, and reaches the market on time, and it is available on time, right? So again, great supply chain management, uh, thing that they focus on in terms of how they go about it, right? So there's a question which says, any specific work experience? Again, it depends on what kind of specialization you're looking at. Like I said, for finance, there are some schools that they don't ask for work experience. However, anything that shows that you have some inclination towards it will help. Say, for example, if you're applying to a London Business School MS in finance kind of a program, obviously when you're applying to really top schools, they want to make sure that the person who is applying has the right aptitude and the reason to join that course too, right? So you also have to make sure that in your essays or SOPs, you convince the admission committee that this is why you want to go about it, right? So we also have, if you want, you can go to the Crackable YouTube channel. I worked with Shrishti this year, so she had a background in supply chain. She worked with in core supply chain with in the manufacturing sector. I think she worked for Schneider, and she's got into one of the top programs for supply chain. In fact, she got a lot of admits this year for when she applied for a master's program. So you might want to look at her story, get an understanding of how she worked through her goals. There's another example of Sandeep here. He had a lot of experience. In fact, he has more than 8 to 9 years experience. He specifically applied for an MS in computer science program in NYU. And this is a very prestigious program, very small cohort size, very small class size. They specifically focus on people who have some kind of, who want to focus on innovation and technology. So his background was, so though he worked for a PSU or PSU kind of a sector, but his entire work was setting up new things and innovative things in his company, right? So that was his story when he applied for this MS in computer science program. Then obviously I work with Kunal too. He applied to all the top MIM programs. Just 1.5 years of experience, but got into all the programs he applied to, whether it was HEC, LBS, INSEAD, and obviously he also applied through the ISB early entry option program. So he got through all the programs, and he chose HEC because it was a 2-year program, and obviously it is one of the top MIM programs in the world, right? So these are the kind of profiles that get to these schools also, which also means that whatever your profile is, it is very important that you put it in the right way. It is very important that you showcase it to the school of why you are the best fit for this program, because it is not always about the school choosing you, right? It works both ways. It's also about whether you will get the most out of the school, because the school is also looking at that, hey, if I give an admit to this person, will this person be able, will the school be able to help this person get to where he or she wants to get to, right? So that is also one thought that they have. So it works both ways. So it's also important that you showcase your strength. At the same time, you also show the fitment of your profile to that particular school, so that it's more like balanced in both ways, right? If you're looking at taking your very important. So if you look at the timelines, right? 2000. If you're looking at 2021, because there are some schools which are still accepting admits for R3, R4 kind of roles. But if you're looking at applying for 2021 intake, which is next year in August for the course to start, because if you look at all around globally, a lot of programs have started their online programs. They are doing their first semester online, which also means by next year, 2021, if you're looking at it, you have to apply by this year, August, September, which means you have to be ready with your GMAT scores or your GRE scores if you're looking at. If you're looking at taking the GMAT online, we have an experience by Ankit, one of our students who took the GMAT online exam. So if you are in a location where the the centers are not open yet, maybe you want to explore the online exam too. You might want to read up on this blog where he talks about his experience taking this online program. It will help you, so that if you are planning, you can also go ahead and take it, right? If you're looking at GRE, because a lot of schools are also taking GRE scores, right? So if you're comfortable, whether it is GRE or GMAT, based on what you're looking at, you can look at preparing or starting preparing for these tests right away. I think now is a good time. If you've not started yet, or if you have not started thinking about it yet, I think it's a good time to start thinking about it. And please, go ahead and plan these things both for GMAT as well as GRE, right? Now, coming to what are the top universities in all these regions that we should consider, right? So I'll get onto the questions in a while. I will go through the chat window, so don't worry. I will help answer most of the questions that are there in the question answer box as well as the chat. So don't worry about it. I don't want to break the flow right now, so let me just go through what I have to talk today, and then we'll discuss the questions, right? Cool. So if you're looking at preferred universities, so obviously Australia, Canada, Germany, Ireland, UK, USA. So all these are typically the standard countries that most people look at. Now let's look at, okay, what are the universities that are offering these kind of programs? So you could look at University of Melbourne, you could look at Monash, you could look at University of South Wales, the ANU, which is Australian National University, and obviously there are a lot more that you could look at. However, these are the top ones that we wanted to list out. If you're looking at Canada, there's University of Toronto, there's University of British Columbia, McGill, McMaster, right? If you're looking at Germany, there's Munich, there's Heidelberg, there's Technical University of Munich, there's Humboldt University of Berlin. In Germany, there's Ireland, there's Trinity College, there's Dublin Business School, there's National University College, Dublin, and there's National College of Ireland, right? UK, obviously Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, University College London. There are a lot more that you could look at. Cranfield is there, Warwick is there. So there are a lot more programs. US, obviously, if you look at the top ones, there's Purdue, there's CMU, that's Carnegie Mellon, there's Arizona State, there is Texas, there's Indiana University, there is Ohio, there is Caltech, right? So there's so many, great schools in US also. One thing about US, since we are here, I would want to tell is in terms of cost, right? Especially when you're looking at master's program, there are public universities and private, private universities, right? Like for example, if you look at Carnegie Mellon, you see the price, the fee structure of Carnegie Mellon is very high, right? Because it comes from a private university kind of a thing. At the same time, when you look at Caltech, which is California, technology, the fee will be very low because it's a government thing, it's a public university, they get a lot of grants from the government, so the chances of assistantships and all that also are a lot more, right? So also when you're looking at US especially, maybe you want to also look at public universities and private universities, and then look at, especially if you have a budget kind of a budget constraint, you might want to look at those aspects also, right? So yeah, if you're looking at masters, this is how you should these are the things you should keep in your mind, right? Now, how do I begin with my master's applications? Now I have an understanding of what colleges I have to apply. I know which region I have to apply. I have also taken my GMAT GRE. I mean, assuming, right? Ideally, you should be taking your GMAT GRE, GMAT or GRE in the, at least by August, I would say, if you're planning for round one. And some master's program, there are some deadlines in December also, so you might want to plan accordingly. But it's very important you plan, right? If you're really looking at 2021 as an option, it's important you plan around it, right? So let's look at how I begin with it, right? So first, obviously, we need to have a bachelor's degree, right? Then we need to focus on making sure that you have the right exams. Now, why do you think they accept GMAT or GRE? Any thoughts? Anything on your mind? Why do you think they take GMAT or GRE? You can put on the chat window. Put on your thoughts on the chat window. Why do they have these tests? Why can't they just judge you based on your grad marks or undergrad marks? You have 10th, 12th. Why do they accept GMAT, GRE? Okay. Someone says academic potential. Okay, but academic potential they can get through your marks also, right? Okay, somebody says standardized test, regional reasoning. Okay, assess current fitness for education, employment requirements, number of application they would like to skim, rigors of the course can be managed, adaptiveness. Awesome. There's so many great points here, right? Now I'll tell you one very important point over here, right? Now, which is not listed in most people. So somebody said it's a standardized test, right? Correct. Number one thing is it's a standardized test. Now what happens, especially say think of India, okay, as a country. Now when you look at India, there is Karnataka University, there is Gujarat University, there is Tamil Nadu University, there is, Jammu Kashmir University. Now, everybody has a different grading system, right? So, if you look at it, Gujarat University, from where I graduated, getting a 60-65% was a big deal, and it was great. Toppers used to get 60-65%, right? Whereas when you go, compare it to a Tamil Nadu University, you have to be like a 98-99% to be, a very different grading system. So what happens is, look, if only in India there are so many grading systems, think of the world, right? There's so many people with different kind of grading systems. Now one aspect of taking these standardized tests is also to make sure that put everyone in the same umbrella, make sure that, okay, I am now going to assess their academic potential based on, have a common background, common thing to weigh all these people who are coming from all over the world, right? That is number one. Number two, what happens is GMAT GRE becomes a very important factor, especially when you're looking at scholarships, right? Now, what happens is, if you look at, when you Google for these schools, right, you will see rankings. You will see Financial Times rankings. You will see Business Week ranking. You will see US News ranking. There'll be thousands of rankings that you will see, when you Google for these schools. Now, what are these rankings, right? Now, what happens is, uh, every ranking or every specific website that you see is, categorizing each school based on certain parameters. Now these parameters could be, the average size of the class, the innovation, the amount they have spending on innovation, or the patent or the research that has come out of that school, or the outgoing classes average salary, or it could be, and one very important is the average GMAT or the GRE score of the class. Now, what happens is, the moment they see someone with a high GRE or a GMAT score, they definitely want that person in the class, because if that person comes to this class, I will be able to improve the average of my, course, right? The average GMAT GRE score of my course, which in turn will help me improve my ranking, right? In any of these, ranking website or ranking, what you say, for example, if I'm looking at US News, right? US News will say, okay, one of the criteria is average GMAT and GRE score of the class. So I see that, okay, if I improve my average by, say, a 10 points, I know I'm going to up my ranking by another 3 or 4 points. Now, globally, like you guys, everybody is looking at applying to a school based on the ranking, right? I want to apply to a top 100 program. I want to apply to a top 20 program. I want to apply to a top 50 program, right? So for the school's perspective, they also want to make sure that they want, more people to apply, and more, competitive students to apply, right? So here entrance exam becomes a very important factor, and that is also the reason why, you guys should also make sure that you put in a lot of effort. See, it's a matter of couple of months, 2 or 3 months. This is the same English and the math that you have, learned all your life. It is tested differently, right? It is, not difficult, it is definitely tricky, right? So you have to make sure that, you understand these tests from the test setter's perspective, and look at it from that perspective and take these tests. So please do give importance to these tests. Third is obviously the proficiency test. Again, a lot of schools waive it off too. So if you're applying to specific programs, you can write to those programs and tell them that, hey, my entire school college was done in English. In fact, in most of you guys, if you have your transcript, in one corner of the transcript, it will be written that medium of instruction is English, right? If you have that, you could actually upload that and send that to the school saying that my medium of instruction was English. Can you waive off my IELTS or TOEFL, test? Is it really necessary? However, some schools still make it mandatory, because obviously they have these tie-ups with PSMU and ETS. So they have to make sure that they can sell their TOEFL IELTS tests also. Some schools will make it mandatory, but some schools do waive it off, right? Fourth is obviously your resume, which also talks about your career progression. It talks about how you have grown in your career, or even if you're a college student, what have you done so far, what kind of internships you have done, what kind of projects you have done. So CV and resume becomes a very important factor. Letters of recommendation, again, see what happens is in your SOPs and essays you will say all good things about yourself, right? But the recommender is someone who validates these good things, right? So typically for master's program, most programs will ask you for one professional and one academic, especially if you are a student applying to that program. But if you are someone with more than a couple of years of experience and you can manage two recommendations, both professional recommendations, either from your peer or your senior or some ex-boss or current boss, it's great. So you could get letters of recommendations. Again, letters of recommendations, these are not like paper-based recommendations. When you go to the school's website, you'll have to create a login. There an automatic mail goes to your recommender, and the recommender fills in that recommendation there online, right? So it's not that you can collect recommendation right now and keep it for later, right? So it has to be done while you're submitting, or at least couple of months before you're submitting, right? So that's about letters of recommendation. And finally, statement of purpose, essays, a very important factor. Again, make sure that you never use a template for this, right? Now remember one thing, I know that a lot of us don't have that flair of writing, right? We are not used to writing in our the way we have in our education system. But it is extremely important to write your essays yourself, or at least the voice should be yours. In fact, at Crackable we have, like I said, I have helped multiple students across different kind of specializations for their essays, whether it's MBA or MIM or MIS or MS in supply chain. So many courses that I have helped. Never have we ever looked at a template, right? It has always been your story, your framework. What we try to do is we give you the right direction, we tell you the right way to think, the right way to put your story across, so that you put it in the right way, right? There is a framework required, but there should not be a template, because the moment you get a template, believe me, if somebody is telling me that, look, don't spend too much, I'll give you a template, just fill in there and submit, believe me, that template has been given to 100 other people, which means all their essays will look similar, right? So never ever use a template. It has to be your way of writing, it has to be your storyline, it has to be the way you say things, right? So just make sure you put in a little bit effort on your SOB and essays. It's extremely important, right? So how do I go about with my whole application process, right? What do I do? So first thing that you want to understand is you want to make sure you focus on what kind of course you want to pick, right? So you might want to decide, okay, what is the specialization I want to take, whether I want to go for an MIS or an MIM or an MBA or a MS in supply chain or MS in marketing or entrepreneurship or whatever, right? So that is the first thing, right? Once you decide that, in fact, we also, at Crackable, if you're looking at help with application process, we help you with all these steps, all right? Then obviously helping you picking up the kind of programs you want to apply to. Again, so what happens is there is one aspect which is an aspirational set of colleges, right? Then there is one aspect which is a set of colleges which are more safe, practical, reachable kind of programs, right? So what we should do is typically have a mix of both. Sometimes we tell them that, I tell students that it's okay to have one aspirational or one, stretch school. Like, for example, somebody says that I want to apply, I don't have a great GRE score, but I definitely want to apply to Caltech, right? I want to apply to the MS in computer science, which is the most sought after course in Caltech. Now, anything below a 330 is not, is not worth applying if you don't have a 330 plus to apply to a school like Caltech, especially because it's in the Silicon Valley, it's, it's in California, and, it's close to the Silicon Valley, and it's, computer science, and it's highly valued. So obviously, it's super competitive too, right? So typically, if you're looking at a mix of the kind of the kind of programs you would want to apply to, or the kind of universities you'd want to select, you could create a mix, right? If you're applying to 5 schools, maybe you want to pick one stretch, you want to pick, 2 or 3 safe or practical schools, and one, like, more like sure kind of a school, right? That might be a slightly lower ranking school also, right? So it could be more based on that. Obviously you have to prepare for your test. You have to make sure that your resume is updated. You have to make sure your if you're looking at the whole process of getting your SOPs and essays and all this in place, you need at least 1.5 months. So do, like, some kind of reverse planning with respect to the deadline. So if your deadline is in September, you should start with all the thinking at least by July, right? So that should be a plan. Get your recommenders prepped right away, right? So at least you should have thought of who I will ask for recommendation, right? So it should not be, and again, these should be people you really trust, right? It cannot be people, it has to be people you trust, that they are definitely going to say good things about you, right? So you have to make sure you prep them. Ideally, like I said, ideally it's perfect if they can write the recommendation themselves. So if you can pick recommenders who can write recommendations, and if they are articulate enough, it will be perfect for you. But in some cases there are, where recommenders will say, hey, I'm not going to write, why don't you just write it for me and I will copy paste, right? In such cases, please don't write it yourself. Get your friend or someone to do it for you, and then at least get it reviewed, and then give it to the recommender. Because it is very important. Say for example, if you are saying in your essays or your SOP that you are very you're a very focused person and you're a quick learner, you want your recommender to give an example about you being a quick learner, or being a very focused person, right? So you cannot, this happened to one of my students, where in all his essays he kept saying that, I am a team guy, and I'm a people's person and things like that. And one of his recommender mentioned that in his recommendation, that all things great about him, but you know what, he needs to work on his interpersonal skills, right? And boom, that's the biggest red flag that is there. So and obviously the school is going to listen to the recommender and not you, right? So it is very important that you make sure that you keep your recommender also in sync with what you want out of them, and also help them with examples. Maybe they don't remember, but you might want to remind them that, hey, remember we worked on this project together, why, do you think we can, you can talk about this example. So it is perfect if you get someone who is articulate enough. But obviously if that, if they aren't, then maybe you want to give them points, or help it get written also, right? So these are typically the focus that you need to, if you are looking at any help with respect to applications. My colleague will just put a link over here. You could just put in your drop in your profile. We can definitely help evaluate your profile and help you plan the next steps. What I will also do now is, let me just take questions. Where is the Q&A? Okay, where is the Q&A? Hold on. Okay, so I have, let me just take questions. Let me just take first question from the chat window. Okay, I have, if you're looking at an MBA, okay, Rachel has just put in a profile evaluation for MS. If you're looking at MBA, you might want to look at the other link. You can get your profile evaluated for MBA too, right? Now, let me look at questions now. I'm just looking at the chat window, and then I will look at the Q&A window. So guys, put in your questions on the Q&A window, okay? Because that is more focused, right? So, okay. So there's someone who says, I plan to do MS in finance in Canada after 2 years. I will finish my bachelor's in 2020. I want to know about 16 years of education rule. I think it is. What I would suggest you should do is, so see, a lot of schools now understand that there are 15-year, 16-year graduation. Even in US, a lot of schools are okay with a 15-year credit system. They might want you to take some extra courses before you start the program to get to match their credit system. But I think the 16-year education rule is okay in Canada, but Canada is slightly more focused on making sure your GPA is in place. So along with your GRE score or your GMAT score, they definitely will look at your GPA, right? So I see that specifically in Canada a lot, right? So that could be something you would want to focus on. So there's someone who says, I have a 13-year experience in aerospace domain. So I would like to pick up more generic questions than specific questions, and then I will, get on to generic questions. So specific questions rather. Okay, there is a question over here which says, are there any top schools, full-time MBA, interested in profile having 12 years of experience because of age factor? So see, one thing you have to understand, especially when you're applying to an MBA or a master's program also, when you look at the school profile list, right, when you look at their website, you will see average experience, average age, average what kind of industry people are coming from and all that. And most schools, especially for master's programs or MBA programs for that matter, since the question is more related to MBA, you will see the average experience is 5 to 6 years, right? Now with this with this, you will see that, okay, since you have a 12-year experience, you're slightly on the right hand side of the graph. However, there are some very specific programs that you can target which are slightly more higher experience people friendly. I'm not saying that people the schools which say 5 to 6 years experience don't take people with 12 years. They do. There are people even with 20 years experience in their class. I have asked this to my own students who are currently studying in these top schools. However, obviously the number is few. So obviously, in terms of acceptance rate, it might be lower. Or you could specifically look at some programs that focus on, higher experienced people, right? So where obviously, like for example, if you're looking at India, IIM Ahmedabad Executive MBA program, which also accepts GMAT score, and it is a full-time program, will definitely value your 12 years experience, right? IIM Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, even ISB for that matter, right? So you could look at those kind of programs, especially if you're looking at, applying with a higher experience. I'm just scrolling through to, okay, there is, I think I already answered this question. The question says, how does MIM judge a student? They will judge you based on your academic potential. This also includes your grades as well as your GRE/GMAT score. They will definitely look at, if you have work experience, they will look at the kind of projects you have worked on. If you don't have work experience, they will look at the kind of internships you have done. A lot of students also talk about the initiatives that they have taken at college, or specific talks they have given, or seminars they have managed or coordinated. So they talk about that. Basically, when you're looking at MIM kind of programs, you want to focus on your leadership skills, you want to focus on your management skills, right? So those kind of things is what you could focus on, highlighting more. Yeah, the next question here is, if you want to move into management consulting and work for McKinsey BCG, would MIM help? See, frankly, if you look at McKinsey BCG or any of these big fours, if you're looking at a management consulting role, they hire MBAs only, right? However, there are people with MIM background who get in as associates, right? So it's not that you can't work, but most cases, I don't think I've encountered, anyone so far. There might be, but I'm not sure. But they specifically hire only MBAs for, management consulting roles. So that is one thing that they look at, right? So if you're looking at management consulting in specific, I would suggest you should go for an MBA rather than an MIM, right? Is MIM a good option in non-European countries? Yes, of course. I just mentioned that European MIMs are more well-known, but obviously you could look at non-European countries too. You could evaluate the other countries too. That's perfectly fine. There's a question which says, can you throw some light on master's programs around data science masters, especially for experienced people? Yes, there are some great MSBA programs and masters in data science programs. You could look at, there are, Duke has a program, which is a great MSBA program. A lot of these top schools have, see, most of the business schools have MSBA programs and MS data science programs. You could look at these programs in most of these business schools because, data science are also used as electives in most top schools, at the same, for top business schools. At the same time, it also gives them an option to make it a STEM, right? So I see a lot of schools adding data science as an elective over there. So it will definitely help. What about programs for more than 18 years experience, guys? So see, if you are slightly on the higher side with respect to experience, what I would suggest is you could look at some executive MBA programs. If you are really not looking at if you're open to non full-time programs also, there are some great programs there are some full-time programs also which could look at more than 18 years experience. But in fact, if you could just go to the Crackable YouTube channel, there is a story by Guha Prasad, who is from IIM Ahmedabad, who had 20 years experience, and he got into IIM Ahmedabad. If you want to look at other programs which need higher experience, there is an LBS loan program on leadership and strategy that looks at people with senior management. So you could look at those kind of programs, right? There's a question here. It says GMAT the GMAT online verticals leading to lower GMAT score. Will MIM admissions of 2021 consider such scores? Also missing AWS section. Frankly, I don't know. This is the first time this is happening, and I don't think they have made any such statement that they will be okay with lower GMAT scores, considering that you've taken it on an online whiteboard kind of an option. But yeah, I don't think any school has ever come out with any such statement, so I'm not sure about that. Right? I'm just going through the questions. Which university is better? Public? It's not like public or private are better. I just mentioned more around the cost, Dipanshu. There are some great universities which are private. CMU is a great example of being a private university and not a public university, but is one of the best in US. So yeah, it's not that anything is better. It's more around the cost part. Which master's program would help me become a management consultant? MBA. That's it, right? There's another question which says NCERT is popular for its MBA, yet MIM figures for MIM are unknown since the last batch hasn't graduated. Where shall it be ranked compared to HGC, LBS, ESSEC, MIM? Well, I'm not sure since they themselves have not graduated, so I don't know. So I'm sure NCERT is going to leverage its brand name for an MBA for the MIM program also, and that's also the reason why a lot of people applied for their MIM program. So, and I don't think they will do anything in terms of quality or in terms of their effort placing students. I think they will do their 100% on that too. So, I think it should be equally good compared to any of the other programs, right? Yeah, somebody says getting LORs in India is not very easy. Well, there is no other option. We have to get LORs. If you can't get it from your supervisor, get it from your peer who might be a senior, get it from a friend who might be in a different project but has worked with you in a specific project, who might be slightly senior to you or even a peer. But there is no other option. We'll have to get it. If you have resigned from the current company and you still have some kind of contact with your older colleagues or older boss, maybe that could be an option. If you have resigned from the company, or there is some previous company you worked with, maybe you want to get a reco from there, right? But it is super important. You could also get if you are in a role where you work a lot with clients, then you could also get a client recommendation. That's also okay. At least one could be a client recommendation, and rest of it, the second one could be a professional, one with the current boss or current peer or colleague or senior or anything of that sort, right? There's a question which says, I have work experience, but through several internships. I have done 2 internships, work from home internships, and 3 months graduation. See, I think more about the internship. Okay, your work experience, internship is not counted. Let's be clear on that, right? Your work experience is completely based on your being a full-time employee. Internships can be used to just showcase what are the different kind of, things you have done, right? So like work experience cannot be counted, internship cannot be counted as work experience, but you could definitely it can definitely be added as a lot. It will definitely be a lot of value add when you talk about what you got out of it, right? So it's okay if it's work from home also, as long as you've done some good work, right? So, or at least you could showcase it as some good work. So this is fine. There's a question, is it advisable or sensible to do an MBA after a master's program? Again, that depends. this is, there are a lot of ifs and buts over here, depending on whether you're doing it immediately after, whether you're doing it after a lot of experience. So yeah, that question is slightly incomplete right now. Okay, there's a question on scholarship. Okay, we might have a separate session specifically talking about scholarship, but let me just give you a quick brief background about scholarships. Now, like I said, scholarships are completely based on why they need you. Please remember that. It is not because you want the money. It is not to make you rich, right? So let's be very clear on that. It will be only if you can show some kind of, uh, you know, positive aspect of your profile or competitive aspect of your profile, for through which the school says, hey, I want this person in my class, right? So this could be through your GMAT score, through your GRE score, it could be through your work experience, it could be through your stellar academic performance, it could be through, something that is unique about you, right? So it could be any of those things. Like if you go to any school's website, there are a lot of scholarships that are available for each and every program that you apply to. Some programs are called merit scholarships. Some scholarships are based on you being through from a specific background. Some could be based on, technology based work. So there are various kind of scholarships that are available. So it could be more based on, that option. How is Crackable different? There is a lot of difference, from other and what it does. So, just again, just to give, I thought most people who are attending would know about Crackable a lot, but let me just, we've been helping students getting into top schools and mentoring them, getting into the career of their choice for years now, ages now, I would say since, 2006. And we have helped students get into top schools anywhere globally. If you pick Harvard, Wharton, Stanford, Indian top schools, US top schools, UK top schools. So our focus is completely to help you from start, which is help you with your profile, to help you with your test, that is GMAT or GRE, and helping you with your application. So we help them, throughout the process. There's a question which says, is GMAT a good option to apply to? Yes, obviously, there are some very good programs in India which accept GMAT scores. Just Google for schools accepting GMAT scores in India, right? So you will find a list. There are Indian schools, if you're looking at MBA programs, ISB accepts GMAT, IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, all the IIMs which have executive programs. I'm not talking about the your flagship programs. I'm talking about the full-time executive programs that they have, and they accept GMAT scores, right? So definitely you can apply to some very good programs through GMAT scores. How do you apply for rolling application, especially MBA? And should you apply a year ahead as an Indian? You have to apply a year ahead as anyone, right? So say for example, if you're applying for a program that starts in August 2021. So today is May 22nd, 2020, correct? If you're applying for a program in August 2021, your deadlines to apply will be this year. And it could range. So some schools have deadlines starting August, and it can go on until January, depending on which round you're applying. You can apply to only one round, or even if it's a rolling application. So you apply this year for an admit next year. So typically, if you're looking at how the flow goes, you apply, when you say apply, you have to be ready with your GMAT score, GMAT or GRE scores. You have to be ready with your essays, your your SOP and your recommendation, your resume, everything. You put all this, submit on the school's website before the due date, which is published on the school's website. Then they go ahead, they evaluate you, they might call you for an interview. It'll take at least a month or one and a half months to get to the interview stage. Then they'll take some time to give you your admit. Once you get an admit, you have to figure out the visa thing, you have to figure out the loan and finances. So all this will take, if you're applying applying this year in August, at least by till March you will be doing all this, right? March is when you will be, if depending on which round you apply, if you're applying in the round 1, by March you will be done and dusted with your visa, everything, and you will fly in July. Right? So that's typically how it works. So depending on which round you're applying, you just add months to it, right? So that's how it works. There's a student who's third year engineering, wants to pursue an MBA. Yes, great great option. Do pursue an MBA. Just, I would suggest take, work for some more time, at least a couple of years of experience, 2 to 3 years experience before you actually apply for an MBA program. But obviously, if you're applying for a master's program, not too much of experience is required, right? There are some duplicate questions, so I'm just, just missing those. I have a question. It says, how easy is it to get a job in Australia on the management side? See, I think, there is nothing like easy or tough. I think it's all about you. If it's not India, see, only India has this whole thing about placements, right? Where we have companies coming to our campus and placing and all that. In most of other parts of the world, you have to network, you will have to figure out, you will have to, so a brand name will help there, because once you get into a good school, at least it gives you that brand name to network, because there'll be a huge alumni network already available who will relate, who will relate to you, and who will help you get a job, right? So one very important aspect when you choose the kind of schools you're applying is also to make sure you figure out that there's a good amount of alumni network, when you're applying. European schools, see, you go for European schools, any of the European schools, one very important aspect that you have to remember is language. Working in, so there is one part which is, you don't need to be fluent in any particular language to get an admit. That's not required, right? They will teach you German, they will teach you Spanish, they will teach you Italian. But after you finish the course, to get a job, it is super important to have the proficiency in the language. It has to be work proficiency in the language. I had a student who joined as a marketing manager in one of the top companies in Germany. He was given a personal tutor by the company to learn German. They said that there is no other option, you have to learn German, right? So that is the kind of importance that is there with respect to language. So if you're looking at working in anywhere in Europe which is non-English speaking countries, language is super important. So you have to make sure that you learn the language. Preferably, I would suggest, get started right away. There are different levels of the language. There's A1, A2, B1, B2 kind of a thing. I think you have to be a C1 or a C2 kind of a level to have that work proficiency. So maybe right now you can just focus on making sure that you have that kind of proficiency, do the initial stuff. And then once you go there, you will get, you'll get more exposure being with people around over there. There's a question over here, MS in supply chain. I have experience in the same domain with IT experience around 11 years. Also with experience in China. Wow, US 4 years. Yes, absolutely. I think you should aim for some really good top schools. You could also explore an MBA kind of a program. Right? Specific timelines, deadlines, frankly, you will find that on the school's website. Let me just look at some other questions. Any idea when the physical test centers or GMAT will be open? In fact, go ahead and, I'm not sure which city you are, but, if in Bangalore, there are, slots that are open right now, because see, all these test centers are managed by Pearson VUE franchisees, right? And they will get their money only if they open up these centers. So they have kind of opened up. I think from June 3rd, I see slots open, and they will just make sure they take specific precautions in terms of sanitizing the area and making sure the students adhere to certain things. But yeah, test centers will be open very soon, right? Depending on which region you are. So yeah, this is more about Bangalore. Do part-time EMBA have placements? No. Very clearly, part-time in EMBA do not have placements. And I'll tell you the reason why, especially for part-time programs. Right now, EMBA can be different in different countries. Like, for example, executive MBA in US is a part-time program, whereas executive MBA in India is a full-time program, right? So it depends on which region you're looking at. But part-time programs, the reason why they don't have placements is also because you are doing part-time, right? So you are working somewhere full-time and then doing this course part-time. So it's unethical to give you a placement, right? With that perspective. So that's the whole reason why part-time programs don't have placements. Financially speaking, getting study loans for masters now considerably harder. See, depends on which program you're looking at. As far as I know, most of the students who have applied this year or are planning to do this year, so far they have not faced any problem with respect to loans. They are getting loans. So, let's see, I don't think, I can crystal gaze too much at this point. 13 years of experience, energy sector. Yes, PGPX, great option. I'm just scrolling through the questions here. Will MBA deadlines be postponed for R1 this year? I think so, right? I really think so, because most of the schools have postponed their, starting date also, which also means that, I think so. But again, like I said, I don't know. It's not really published, so I really can't comment too much on that. Will Chinese add to competition there? Interesting discussion. Hope not, but I don't know again. So yeah, but lot of, we can go on another hour discussing on whether this will be there or not. But yes, I'm really not sure. Right. Let me look at the chat window now. I think I just covered most of the questions that are there on the Q&A panel. Analytical ability, whether to do grad, undergrad are gone. Okay, let me just. Okay, there's a question which says the SOP should be professional or simple. Does having below average pointer coming? Okay, so see what happens over here is you have to understand one thing. There is no formula to this, right? Because if there was a formula, I would have given that formula to each one of you and everybody would have gotten admit, right? So, but that is not this, that is not possible, right? So what is very important is you have to make sure that, so see, everything is about how you put it across in the right way, right? In fact, I was talking about this to, this is a very important aspect. In fact, when you're looking at a management program or any program for that matter, it is very important to showcase, because see, what you tell is what people will hear, right? If you say I have a boring job, I go to, go at 9 o'clock in the morning, I come back at 5 o'clock, I eat Maggie and sleep, then that's what I think you are doing, right? But if you say, hey, you know what, I have a very interesting role, I go to the office and I'm in a very responsible role where, I'm managing this non-stop servers, where these non-stop servers have millions of transactions every second, and even one goof up I do can be millions of dollars to the client, and that is the reason why I have to be so, alert and very focused in terms of every solution that I give, and that is one reason why I have been able to, bring out that whole solution problem solving mode in me and things like that. So it's all about how you say it, right? So it is very important to be simple, don't have very complex language, but it is very important to showcase it in the right way, right? So like I said, what you say is what people will hear, so it is important that you say it the right way, right? Without obviously fibbing. You don't really need to fib on things like that, but it's very, very important that you showcase it in the right way. What if I've pursued an MBA earlier as a fresher and now applying to a perfect, no problem at all. I think this is again a very common thing. I have seen a lot of people who have done their engineering and or graduation, and immediately after that they go for an MBA program. In fact, in such cases, if you have considerable experience between your first MBA and the second MBA, you can tell them that, look, when I did my MBA first time, I really didn't have an understanding of corporate world. Now I understand. So, obviously the way I look at an MBA is completely different right now. Right? So you could look at that. Okay, do make sure you take a look at all the links that my colleague Rachel has shared on the chat window. This is extremely, informational blogs and videos that will help you. I'm just scrolling through all the questions here to see if there is anything different that I could answer. Yes, ISB accepts GRE scores. IIM Ahmedabad, depending on what program, I think they do, but you might want to check once. I have a startup. Will there be counted? Yes, obviously, why not? It will be counted as work experience as long as it's true. When should we take GMAT for 2021 intake? So ideally, take your GMAT before, okay, so if you're looking at R1, the deadlines will start, assuming that everything is not postponed and everything is as is. Most schools start their deadlines in September. And Indian schools like IIMs, if you're looking at Indian IIMs, then they start in August, which means you should be done with your GMAT at least by July, right? If you're looking at round 2, you can push it a little bit further, because round 2 will be somewhere in November, December, which is okay for you to take by maybe October, right? So depending on that, you can take, you can plan. Ideally, if you're looking at R1, I would suggest please, take it by July, August maximum, right? Hey, average score and all, you can look at the school's website. I don't remember all this. Okay. Cool. So cool. I think I have addressed most of the questions which are there. If you have any other queries, please write to enquiry@crackable.com. And we would love to discuss your profile with you. If you're looking at help with respect to your GMAT or GRE or even applications, please let us know. We have helped students getting into top schools every year, and we would like to help you too. So let me know if you need any help around this. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. I hope this was helpful and informative. Looking for your feedback. If there's anything specific you would like us to cover for the next session, we would love to do that too. So you could just write to us. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, Varun. Awesome. Thank you so much, Avinash. Thanks, guys.